Hello everyone, David here. 2019 was an awesome year for virtual reality. We had the release of the Oculus Quest, as well as the Valve Index, a whole plethora of great games, and a little peek into the future with the new Oculus varifocal prototypes. Not to mention the announcement of Half-Life Alyx, which has stoked some fresh interest from mainstream gamers who will be looking to get into VR for 2020. I wanted to break down my top 10 VR games of 2019, so if you're new to the scene, you'll know where to begin. I play everything on my Oculus Quest, which obviously plays native Quest games, but can now also play Rift games through Oculus Link, as long as you have the right cables. And of course, anything in Steam that supports the Rift can be played over the Link as well, which is almost everything nowadays. Okay, so my top 10 VR games of 2019, let's go. Okay, so I'm immediately breaking my own rules. The Great Sea is not so much a game as a movie, but it's rendered in a game engine, Unreal, so you still have the full 6 degrees of freedom to move around and look at things at different angles. It's in this list because it's a very good movie, with a strong emphasis on its VR presentation. The composition is artistic without breaking the rules of comfort for VR. The camera can move at times, but never does so in a nauseating way. And there are options if you want to force it to use a static camera as well. They play with the stereo separation, so at times you feel like you're looking over the character's shoulders, and at other times looking down on a diorama. With an excellent story by Philip K. Dick, this is a unique app worth checking out. I was at Oculus Connect when they announced and demoed this game for the first time, and it has held up as being a lot of fun. It was ported to Quest this year and held up surprisingly well in the graphics department. Obviously, a lot of the fancy effects and geometry were toned down, but it has retained its sense of urgency and fluid gunplay. The locomotion system feels ever so slightly dated now. Turn to aim at the end of a teleport doesn't seem to have gained quite the widespread acceptance in more modern titles, but it was revolutionary at the time.
RoboReady's analytics team requests that you collect as many functioning products as possible.
Combining Beat Saber with guns was always a tricky idea to get right, but they did it. Pistol Whip sees you walking forward through a level and mowing down bad guys in a kind of John Wick style, set to a pumping electronic soundtrack. You get bonus points for shooting enemies on the beat, so you're encouraged to find the rhythm of each level, and it feels great when you do. Every time I play this, I pull a muscle in my thighs. Such is the amount of Matrix-style bullet dodging you will perform. It's hugely fun, and even better on Quest, where you can play completely cable-free.
Find your own way.
You just have to find it.
It's waiting for you. It was
Senua's Sacrifice is the gold standard for how to port a regular game to VR. They have taken a third-person action game and created a camera system which works in a headset. So you get a AAA game now with the immersion of virtual reality. Some of their tricks are clearly on display, such as the letterboxing technique, when they do want to move the camera in a more conventional manner, and I find it works very well. In the footage captured here, it might look like the window is relatively small, but when you centre your gaze on it, it's about the same as looking at a monitor or TV a small distance away. They also desaturate the edges of the screen to reduce motion sickness, which is a nice touch. The only reason it's not higher in this list is because in the game you travel to hell, and you really feel like you're there. For the same reason I thought The Last of Us was an amazing technical achievement, I don't really want to inhabit this world, so I admire it from a distance. Your mileage may vary, but personally I hope the developers create a more inviting universe with their technical prowess in the future. Boneworks has been out for less than a month and it's already made quite the splash. With a full physics simulation of almost every object in the game, it spoiled us for many other games. Everything you see can be touched, held and swung in a realistic way, including your own player body. You don't have infinite strength, which leads to some odd feedback when it doesn't let you swing a heavy object. As well it should, although I feel like I would like some feedback about where my real arm is when it restricts me, like you can see in Lone Echo. The game itself has a very Half-Life-y feel, with barely any exposition, just a few mysterious crumbs of plot scattered around, and then you're left to play with the world. I've been playing for a few hours and still haven't encountered any NPCs, if there are any. As such, I feel more impressed with the tech than I am invited into the game. There are more tempting titles to boot up at the moment, but I am so glad Stress Level Zero made this game, and it's raised the bar for physics interaction in VR. Moss was originally a PSVR game, but has made the transition to Quest with very little apparent trimming down. You play as the Reader, a ghostly entity that guides Quill, the cute little mouse protagonist. As well as controlling her like a traditional third-person adventure game, you can also directly interact with the environment, pulling platforms into a useful position, or slowing down a fast-moving object so Quill can hitch a ride. The game has a wonderful charm to its oversized miniature world, and you are recognised just enough as the player to feel like a part of the world without dominating it. In between the platforming sections, the main story is told through an interactive book, which is a little hammy but fits in with the childlike aesthetic. I like Moss, and I think you will like it too. Star Wars is a franchise that is so often handled badly. With its ubiquitous tie-ins, there are as many good products as bad. I'm happy to say that the Vader Immortal Trilogy channels the light side, and is a good mix of exploring, battling, and a standalone story set in the Star Wars universe. I'm not sure if it's technically canon or not, but it doesn't really matter. Darth Vader is presented in all his breathy glory. And when you're standing right next to him, you realise what an imposing, tall figure he really is. The lightsaber combat is handled very well. They have struck a nice mix between one-to-one movement and pre-canned animations, so that when you parry an enemy's attack, it feels right and looks cool. The only negative point I have is that the world is very industrial and a little repetitive. You end up walking through some fairly blank corridors and cave tunnels. But overall, they've done very well in giving us a taste of the Star Wars, and fighting droids alongside Darth Vader was one of my favourite ever moments in VR.
You have acquitted yourself well. I will not be denied. You will help seize the Bright Star.
What can one say about Stormland? Stormland is a very polished game. Insomniac have thought very hard about how to make a game work well in VR. The locomotion system is great by default and has numerous options to tweak it to your liking. The seated mode is excellent. The gunplay and inventory system works well. I particularly like how the guns hover in front of you before snapping onto an available gun slot, or dropping to the ground if you're fully stocked. I was initially put off at the thought of playing as a robot, but it grew on me as I played, and the other bots have a lot of character as the story unfolds. All the actions and gestures feel very natural, and climbing up a tall building to gun down the enemies at the top feels particularly satisfying. Okay, I realise Beat Saber actually came out in 2018, but it's just so good, and I've spent a lot of time playing it this year, and what I would call the definitive version, i.e. cable-free, did release this year on Quest. It's almost the perfect rhythm action game for VR. There are no locomotion issues because everything comes to you, no haptic issues because you have lightsabers which effortlessly cut through the blocks, and the whole game surrounds you in a psychedelic acid trip of colour and flashing neon. Some songs are definitely better than others. I prefer the ones carefully curated by the original dev team, but they're all pretty fun. This is a great title to introduce to someone if you want to win them over to VR. And my favourite game of 2019, which you may have guessed by method of elimination, is Asgard's Wrath. Now, here is a world I am eager to explore and return to, in which I want to level up my characters and dig into the gameplay to really understand it fully. There is a bit of a learning curve. The game starts off easy, but soon you discover you absolutely need to perform the special moves such as the parry to inflict any damage on the enemies at all. In fact, I might have suggested they tweak this gameplay to make it a little more forgiving, as I've died a lot of times because my character didn't parry, even though I could have sworn I, as a player, did. Also, now I do get the Boneworks effect. Trying to interact with a world where some things have no physics properties is a real letdown. It's kind of the uncanny valley of VR immersion. Having said that, the characters and art are gorgeous. Every tutorial with Loki beaming down at you is a treat, and when it does work, it's magical. There is a particularly enjoyable magic axe that returns to your hand, just like Mjolnir does with Thor, and when you nail it, you do feel like a god. Okay, that's my top 10. I realise I cheated a little by including software that was even ported this year, but it reflects what I've spent my own time playing, so hopefully should be more useful to you. I don't expect we'll get a lot of new hardware in 2020. Rather, both Valve and Oculus will improve things more on the software side for now, but it is looking very good for the future. I hope the quality of Oculus Link continues to improve, and I'm really looking forward to the release of Half-Life Alyx, although it is kind of tradition at this point for the game to slip and for Valve to push the release date back. Personally, I would love to see some big open-world RPGs like Skyrim or The Witcher, and as VR becomes more mainstream, this is getting more and more feasible. I feel like some honourable mentions should go to VR Chat, Sirento VR, Onward and Pavlov, all of which I've heard are good, but I haven't yet played myself. Okay, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, then leave me a like down below, and you can help me out by subscribing to my channel as well. Okay, see you next time.